Today, we're going to get a little nutty on Real Agriculture. We're going to talk about the growing hazelnut industry in Ontario. And to get the scoop on this new crop, I'm joined by Andrew Nixon, who is the project coordinator for the Ontario Hazelnut Association. Hey, how's it going, Andrew?
Hi, Bernard. It's going very well. Thanks for having me today.
Hey, well, thanks for joining us. Now, the federal government announced earlier last week about some funds to support the Ontario hazelnut industry as it grows. And I want to talk about that in a few seconds. That's good news for growers in the province. But before we get there, hey, Andrew, give me a snapshot of your industry. You know, the size, the scope, and how it's grown in recent years.
Sure. So the Ontario Hazelnut Association, we were established in 2013, and we signed a memorandum of understanding with Ferrero Canada to create a new industry based around hazelnuts in Ontario. So there's been research trials at the University of Guelph since 2008 and 2009 at the Simcoe Research Station to identify which varieties grow well in Ontario. And over the past decade, we've been able to provide recommendations to growers based on those research trials to give growers some confidence in being able to choose varieties that will work well for their areas. And last spring 2016, we did a grower trial program that had 6 growers spread throughout the province, plant 10 acres each. And we've been very happy with the results and the response that we've got, and we've hosted workshops and tours for it. And just this past year, Ferrero Canada's announced a goal of 10,000 hectares in the province by 2027 and 1,000 hectares in the province over the next 2 years. So we're very excited to work with Ferrero towards that goal.
Right. Now, you mentioned, I think you got about 500 acres in the ground right now. Let's talk about, from a grower's perspective, how long does it take to establish the crop, and, when do you hit full production?
Sure. So you'll plant a tree that's 1 or 2 years old, and hazelnuts will start to produce a yield in about their 4th year, and that will increase up to maturity between year 8 and 10, depending on how quickly the tree will establish. And at maturity, growers can expect about 4 kilos per tree, and at different planting densities, at high density at maturity, you would be able to expect about 2,000 pounds per acre.
Right, 2,000 pounds per acre, and at about $1.50 an acre, so you're grossing, $3,000 an acre. Pretty nice crop.
Ideally, yes.
Yeah. Hey, talk about, I guess, inputs. I mean, I guess labor would be the big one. Is that correct?
It's different from growing apples or growing from tender fruit. Hazelnuts are actually not as labor intensive. They're mechanically harvested, which takes a lot of the legwork out of it, and it's just maintaining the orchard, pruning the trees, and fertilizing, irrigating. Recommend fertigation, so you can do that all in one go.
Mm-hmm. Hey, let's talk about markets. How's demand, and what are the end uses? Now, I love Nutella, but there's more than that, right?
Yes. Ferrero Canada has a plant in Brantford that produces all of the Nutella, and Kinder and Ferrero Rocher for Canada and the Eastern U.S. But they're the largest market, but they're one part of it. So it's the processed market for hazelnuts. They're the main player, but in the fresh market, you have retailers such as Loblaws and Bulk Barn, where you can sell hazelnuts in shell. So Ferrero will take the hazelnut kernel once it's out of the shell, but there's alternative markets for fresh shell, farmers markets and major retailers. So on top of that, you have a number of value-added spin-offs. Hazelnuts are similar to almonds, so you'd be able to press them into oils, grind them into flours, and turn them into milks. There's also some breweries that we have in the province that are interested in exploring a hazelnut beer too. So we're excited to work with some brewers in the future.
So hey, who are Ontario growers going to be competing against? Does most of the imports come from Oregon and other countries?
A lot of the imports in Ontario come from around the world. So Turkey is the number 1 supplier of hazelnuts in the world. They do about 70% of global production. Oregon actually exports most of their crop to China, so we don't have to worry necessarily too much about competing directly with Oregon for fulfilling Ontario's needs. But Ferrero's Brantford plant uses 11,500 tons of shelled hazelnuts annually, which equals about 23,000 acres of hazelnut orchards. So we have a long way to grow before we're worried about having to compete internationally. But hazelnuts are also a crop that can be exported around the world, similar as Oregon does with China. So growers have a local domestic market, but they also have export opportunities to Europe and China and Asia.
Right. Hey, let's talk about the federal funding announcement from last week, $492,000 to support the industry. Tell me about what that means for the industry and what you hope to achieve with it.
Yeah, so we were incredibly pleased to be able to receive that support from Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada through the Agri-Innovation Program using Growing Forward 2 money. So that project's made a significant contribution to the research development process. It's created new innovations in micropropagation, variety selection, orchard management, and nursery management. And we expect that those innovations will be able to provide the groundwork for being able to help this industry expand significantly over the next 10 years.
Awesome. Hey, and a final question for you now. It appears obviously that the value chain is coming together, the research work is getting done. As you look 10 years out, what's the potential for this crop from an acreage perspective and overall for the industry?
Mm-hmm. So over the next 10 years, working with Ferrero to get 10,000 hectares in the province, we would be a major commodity crop at that point. So just like other developed industries like apples, peaches, and even grain and oil seeds, at that point, we would have a fully functioning value chain with growers, input suppliers, aggregators, and processors, and those other value-added businesses all working together to be able to create a completely new industry here.
Yeah, and you're looking at, as I say, 1,000 acres or 1,000 hectares short-term and 10,000 long-term?
Correct. Yeah, 10,000 over the next decade.
Awesome. Well, hey, it's a great story, sir. Hey, thanks for taking the time. We'll check in and we'll be watching.
My pleasure, Bernard. Thanks for having me.